Welcome, everyone, wherever you are in the world. Hopefully you're in the Holy Land. It's the best land, the only land, the Holy Land to be on the 13th day of the month of Cheshvan, 5778. Whoa! Yeah! Listen there, I must have had too much breakfast over here. Today we are on the second part, but I saw that the boss, he divided the first class into part 1 and part 2. So I'm going to call this part 3, even though it's really the second class. So part 3. The subject today is Jews and Gentiles. Will they unite at the end of times to one equal family? Jews and Gentiles, will they unite at the end of days to one equal family? A quick summary of part 1, those that missed it. A quick summary, we're going to add a few lines which are also important. So here it goes. Catch it for those that missed it. We talked about the representatives. When we think about the Jewish nation and we think about the non-Jews, usually the two figures that we think about are Jacob and Esau. They were born, they are twins, they were born at the same time, same mother, same father. Different. The story of Ishmael, the Islam, that's a whole different story over there. It's a different, if it's a different mother, it's a maidservant. Here we have two parents on the same wavelength, Rebecca and Isaac, and they give birth to two children. Should be kind of like the same, should be the same story. Both of them should be pretty much like the same personality, same type. So we see on one hand there's some kind of connection between these two, Jacob and Esau. Because if there was no connection between them, then of course one would have been could have been born through a different mother or at a different time. They don't have to be twins. The fact that they were born together, that raises an eyebrow to give us some kind of understanding that there is some type of connection here. Okay, this connection continues. No one notices any difference between the two boys up until the age of 13 and 15. They look exactly the same. They're the same spiritual level. They have the same good grades in school. You know, you go to the PTA meetings and your parents come out with a double smile. Everything is going smooth sailing. Afterwards, the tide turns and there's a total separation. It says when Esau was 15 years old, in one single day, he committed a whole list of treacheries, of transgressions on one day. 5 sins on one day. And this was the beginning of the separation of the two boys, the nations of the world, the Jewish people and others. Now, this continued, and at the age of 63, Isaac the father suspects that he might be on his last leg, he might pass away. He calls in his son, Esau, who he thinks is a righteous person, who he considers that he will be the continuation of Rebecca and of Isaac, of the Jewish nation. Here's our candidate. So what happens is that at the age of 63, Jacob and Esau are the age of 63 now, and Isaac tells his son Esau, go out to the fields, catch some bounty, make a meal, and I'll give you a blessing. Give you a blessing. Okay, so everything, Rebecca receives a prophecy from God to go out and save the show. She must save the show because it is forbidden that such a wicked person like Esau should receive the blessing of a righteous man like Isaac, who is now blind, cannot see, and he's mistakenly thinks that Esau is the continuation. God comes in, it's the bottom of the ninth, 2 outs, bases loaded. It's really getting hairy over here, and Hashem comes through and he tells Rebecca, and she goes and tells Jacob, and he dresses up, and the rest is history. He's able to receive the blessing from the father. Okay, at that point, not only is there a separation between the two paths of the brothers, one is righteous and one is wicked, but now Esau is after the head of Jacob. He wants to kill his brother Jacob. Jacob, for the next 36 years, you got it right, for the next 36 years, he's hiding from his brother. 36 years go by. So now, their age of 99. After 36 years, there's a reunion. See, we're putting into a package deal here. You got it down in a few minutes here. You got the age group and something that probably we haven't understood time-wise in the time frame what's going on over here. So now they're 99 years old. 36 years have passed since the blessings were supposed to go to Esau. Jacob, on a prophetic message from his mother, Rebecca, takes the blessings. It had to be that way. And now there is a reunion. So once again, we have twins. They're together in the womb of the mother. They're together for 15 years. They look like they're on the same team. And then they go separate. They go separate for many years. And then at the age of 63, the blessings, and there's once again a total separation between the two. Jacob's life is on the line. He has to hide out for the next 36 years until the age of 99. Now once again there's a reunion as Jacob returns from the White House, from the house of Lavan, after 22 years there, 14 years in the yeshiva of Shem and Ever. Put it together. I know today it's hard to do the math without our calculators for us, but we'll suffer through it. 36 years. So we're 99 years old, and there's a reunion. Okay, we're together, all together now. Now, Esau, he throws out an invitation. He throws out an invitation to his brother Jacob. He says, Jacob, why don't you join me in the eastern part of the land of Israel, in the mountain of where Esau lives, his turf, his hometown. It's called Seir, the mountains of Seir. And Jacob says, you know what? No problem. We're going to meet up. We're going to meet up. I don't know exactly when, but we're going to meet up. I have kids. I have women. We go slower, but we're going to meet up one day. We're going to meet up one day. And the sages tell us what was the intention of Jacob. Jacob didn't want to lie and say, you know what, forget you, man. I'm not going to be with a wicked person like you. We must keep separated. He didn't want to say that because he might find himself dead. So he tells them, like mañana, push it off. He tells them, we will get together. This way he's not lying. We will get together. When? In the end of days. As it says in the prophet Obadiah. Obadiah was a Gentile convert. He came from the people of Esau, from Seir. And it takes one to know one. As the Talmud teaches us in Tractate Makot on the 10th page, when you want to take down a tree, you have to use an axe. And an axe, if you ever noticed, its handle is part of a tree. So if you want to bring down a tree, you got to use a tree. If you want to bring down the nations of the world, you got to use a representative who knows the language, who walks and walks the talk. Yeah, something like that. So, anyways, Obadiah speaks about the downfall of Esau in the times of the Messiah. In the times of the Messiah. Now, so that's what Jacob says, I'm going to meet you, but when I'm going to meet you, it's to repay you and your descendants for all the tragedies, for all the killings and murders and holocausts, that pogroms that you've perpetrated against the Jewish people for thousands of years. We will get together, but it's payback day. That's what Jacob's message was. This is brought down, if you look in Ovadia, he has only one chapter. On the 21st verse, it says, Ve'alu Moshiim, the saviors of the Jewish people will go up to the mountain of Seir. Well, based on a verse in Micha, the prophet Micha, in chapter 5, verse 4, it's written there, there's a verse that talks about 7 saviors and 8. So this verse of Micha is brought down in the Talmud, in the tractate of Sukkot, on the 52nd page, on the second side. And it says there the names of the 7 saviors and also a group of 8 leaders. And one of the 7 saviors is none other than Jacob. Jacob is called Moshiim. And it says in Ovadia, Ve'alu Moshiim, that on the day of payback, when the God of Israel will avenge the Jewish blood over the thousands of years that was done to us by the nations of the world, one of them that will go up and meet up with Esau this time will be none other than Jacob. And this is brought down in black and white. This is brought down also in black and white. If you look at the classic commentary on the prophets, one of them is Rabbi David Kimchi, otherwise known as the Radak. And the Radak writes this on chapter 1, verse 21. He says it specifically that this verse is talking about the 7 saviors that are mentioned in the Talmud, Sukkot, Tractate Sukkot, page 52, side B. So we have, very interesting, we have a reunion at the age of 99, and then Esau is offering to keep this reunion steady Eddie, to continue this reunion, to become one family again, and Jacob refuses. He's not hugging, he's not kissing, he's putting him off to the manana. We will meet thousands of years down the road, baby. We have patience. It will come that day of payback for you and your descendants. So Jacob keeps it separate. He keeps it separate. Okay. After that, this was at the age of 99. 47 years later, on the holiday of Sukkot, once again there's a reunion of Jacob and Esau, but in a different fashion. Now they are both dead. On the day of Sukkot, let's play back a little bit. Jacob passed away 70 days before the holiday of Sukkot. And there he is mourned in Egypt for all the benefits that the Egyptians had from Jacob, because as we know, the famine, once Jacob came into the land of Egypt, the famine stopped for the Egyptians. So he saved them a lot of hassle, a lot of pain. So therefore they repaid Jacob, the people of Egypt, and for 70 days they mourned. After that, they went up to the family of Jacob, his children, his grandchildren. They went up to the Holy Land, to Hebron, to the cave of the patriarchs, and there they prepared to bury Jacob. Enter into the picture Esau with his army. He comes and he says, no, this is mine, this belongs to me, this land is my land, not your land, buddy. And the Jewish people, the sons of Jacob said, what are you talking about? This was given to us. Prove it. Esau says, so the Joseph, they send one of the brothers, the fastest Olympic A representative of the Jewish people back then was a guy named Naphtali, one of the 12 sons of Jacob, and he runs back towards Egypt. In the meantime, a son of Dan, one of the 12 sons of Jacob, had a grandson. His name was Chushim. Chushim, we said in the Torah, is spelled without a vav. So that means those are the letters of Messiah. Chushim, if you scramble the words around, you will find that it spells out the word Mashiach, Messiah. Very interesting. So we have here a little sample of what will come at the end of days. What comes? All of a sudden Chushim says, he was hard of hearing. It was hard for him to speak also. He says, what's going down here? Why are we not burying our father? Why is he being embarrassed and his body is being transgressed here? It's a disgrace what's going on with our father. Why is our father being disgraced? And then he was explained, maybe they yelled to him, and he understood, and he took a hatchet, some kind of sword, blade, and another one bites the dust. And that was the end of Esav. Okay, so very interesting. So we see that a guy named Chushim, which spells out the letters of Messiah, which means the end of days. We see here the same principle we spoke about 2 minutes ago, that Jacob says there will come a day where we will reunite, but not what you think. Well, not what you think the reuniting is. It's payback day. It's punishment time for you all. That's the day that we're going to get together. So we see that Jacob says straight out, when we meet up again, it's revenge time. You're going to have to pay the price for all the tragedy that you perpetrated against the Jewish people. So we see a small version of this, a trailer, you might say, of what's to come when Chushim, Messiah, comes at the end of the days of Jacob and Esav, and he takes off the head of Esav. So we see here, once again, some type of reunion of the two brothers at their death. But there is another point which is very interesting. And that point we will discuss. What does it mean? The point is that according to Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer and other sources, we see, unlike what it says in the Talmud, there's an extra detail which is not told in the Talmud. The Talmud says that the eyes of Esav fell onto the feet of Jacob when Chushim let him have it, took a sword to his head, and the eyes of Esav fell onto the feet of Jacob. But in Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, it tells us another detail. It tells us that the head of Esav fell onto either the feet of Jacob first, and then to the grave of Isaac. And we spoke about, in parentheses, how Isaac tries to be milamed zchut. He tries to find good points in order to get Esav out of hell that he's heading to. So his father comes, Isaac, and he tries to talk about different good points that Esav had during his life. For example, like honoring parents. We learn a lot from Esav. Anyways, when Isaac hears that the descendants of Esav will destroy the land of Israel, will destroy the temple, he no longer stands up to defend his son Esav. He keeps quiet and lets it go totally, which is very interesting. In this week's portion of the week, it says that after Abraham tried to find some kind of favor, some kind of merit in the people of Sodom and Gomorrah, and he was not able, when he understood that from this place, it's such a wicked place, nothing good is going to come out from this place, what was Abraham's reaction? it says Vayashkef. The words is that he looked out. Why was he looking at the city of Sodom as it was being destroyed? So the commentators say an unbelievable Torah. Don't think that Abraham, after he tried fighting for them, to try to find favor in the eyes of God, don't think that after fighting for these people, that he identified with them, that he cried. No! He despised them after he understood that no good was going to come from this community, from this city. He looked with despise at these people. That is a tremendous lesson. Same thing with Isaac. He's trying to, bring up some good points. He's trying to maybe find some, to find favor in God's eyes. But once he understands what Esau and descendants are up to, what is their final destination? To destroy the Jewish people, the land of Israel, the Temple Mount, he understands, and that's it. There is no more cry from the mouths of Abraham or Isaac's. Okay. Now, so remember, we have this reunion, we have separation, reunions, separation, reunions for the entire life of these two. Esau, Jewish people, Esau, the nations of the world, Jacob, Jewish people. So we see a constant back and forth, connected, not connected. Okay, and then remember the point that we see that the body of Esau, the entire body of Esau, was thrown out of the cave of the patriarchs, and it was buried in the territory of Esau, which is on the mountain, the east part of the land of Israel, which is in a community, a city called Seir. That's where his body. So very interesting. Why in the world is his head in such a holy place? I understand his body was thrown, throw it to the dogs in the mountains of Seir. That I understand. But what's his head doing in such a holy place? That we'll understand as the class goes on. Okay, now we mentioned that the final battle here took place on Sukkot. Jacob was brought in to be buried on Sukkot, the first day of Sukkot, and Esau was killed by Chushim, letters Messiah, also on the day of Sukkot. This brought a question into our minds. This brought a question that just like today, unfortunately, there are many voices out there by Jews and non-Jews that speak about an equality, a connection between the nations and the Torah. We spent time before the summer break, we spent time discussing how this is not so. Actually, if a Gentile is going to start studying Torah, issues that are not connected to him, he is, so to speak, put to death. The court does not put a person to death only in the 7 commandments of Noah, and this is an additional, as we said, there are about 70 commandments, but only the 7 that are listed, a person would be sent to death. But he merits to be dead. He's not going to be put to death, but he would have merited to have death. And then we saw that before Moses passes away on the 7th day of Adar, he tells us, Torah tziva lanu Moshe, morasha kilat Yaakov, that the Torah is an inheritance for the Jewish people, and not, the Talmud says, for the Jewish people and not the nations of the world. And we showed that the nations of the world were not present at Mount Sinai. So there is also a voice. There is also a voice that, just like the voice wants to tell us that there's an equality between the Jewish people and the nations of the world when it comes to the Torah, when it comes to the Holy Torah. As we mentioned, I think last week, that do not think for a second, it is true that God offered the nations, but even if a nation would have accepted the Torah, even if a nation would, they didn't accept the Torah because it's not connected to them. But even if they would have accepted the Torah, we're talking about, of course, when the world was created, it was created for the sake that the Jewish people would receive the Torah on the 6th day of the month of Sivan. So when we're talking about the Gentiles receiving, it would be on a very, very low fire, on a very, very low scale. They would have maybe received a certain amount of more commandments. But still, the Torah belongs to the Jewish people, no matter how you slice it. From the creation of the world, this was understood. Now, the same voices that we hear are also out there when it comes to the holiday of Sukkot. We are told that, and we see with our own eyes, many Jews out there inviting Gentiles to their booths, to their Sukkot, and at the time of the holiday of the Tabernacles, I think that's what it's called in English, if I'm not mistaken. And they tell us, you see that the Jewish people, they bring sacrifices for the nations of the world during the holiday of Sukkot, which of course is true, but we'll get into what exactly the message behind these sacrifices are. And they'll tell us that there's a prophecy in Zechariah 14, which is true, that at the end of days, that the nations that do not come up to Jerusalem on Sukkot will be totally devastated and destroyed. That is true, but we have to understand exactly what the context is. So if we take out our glasses and we put a little bit of water on our face, we will see the following, that it looks like the holiday of Sukkot. There is a connection between the nations of the world and the Jewish people. But if we look again, we'll see that on one hand there is a small connection, but mostly 95-96% there's a total separation between the Jewish nation and the nations of the world during Sukkot. And let's give a few proofs to this point. Okay. Number one, we know in the tractate of Avodah Zarah, it says that on the holiday, that the nations of the world at the end of times, they will come to receive their reward for all the great things that they did in the world. They're going to come for their reward. And Hashem says, but you didn't study any Torah, you didn't help with that, you didn't do any commandments. What are you coming here asking for reward? Oh, God, if you would have just given us some commandments, we would have proved to you that we're just better, we're even better than the Jewish people. So what does God pull out? Pulls out of his hat and he says, okay, I'm going to give you a test. What's the test? There's 613 possibilities here, folks. Of all the 613, God picks, you got it. Sukkot, where this is the holiday of unification, uniting the Jewish people with the nations, right? Yeah, not exactly. Because we see what happens, that the nations of the world, they go into that sukkah, and it's a little hot over there. It's a little hot in that sukkah. So what do? Not only do they go out, not only do they go out of the sukkah, which is understandable, because even a Jew, if he's suffering in a sukkah, though we know thousands of stories of Jews that suffered in their sukkah, whether it was rain or whether it was heat, and they refused to leave the holy sukkah. But forget putting that on the side right now. But according to the letter of the law, a Jew is allowed to leave the sukkah if it's uncomfortable. So the Talmud says, what's wrong with the Gentiles going out of the sukkah? There's just one detail left here. That when they went out of the sukkah, they gave one of these karate chops, one of these, one of these Billy Jack, like, boom, kicks to the sukkah. Oh, you evil sukkah, look what that's the difference. So God sees that they are not connected, and that's the end of history. God proves to the nations of the world that they are not connected. They are not connected to the Torah. They are not connected to the Jewish people. That is a proof. So we see that actually Sukkot is a time where we have a separation between the men and the boys, between the Jewish nation and the nations of the world. It's actually a separation. That's the first proof. Second proof is, we know that in the prophet Yechezkel, in chapters 38 and 39, Ezekiel, I think they say it in English. So we see there that the downfall of the nations, the 70 nations of the world, the downfall will be on the holiday of Sukkot. They will be punished. There will be tremendous. It says 2/3 will be 2/3 of the world will be destroyed. This is revenge time. Sukkot represents a separation between the Jewish people and the nations of the world, or putting it more exact, between the righteous of the Jewish people and the nations of the world, or as we will see, the righteous of the nations. That's a separating line. So we see also a separating point on Sukkot. Number 3.